Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu. Thanks for joining us. The British call them the Falkland Islands. Argentina calls them Las Malvinas. Residents of the tiny South Atlantic islands are now voting to decide how they want to be governed. On Sunday, they began lining up to vote on a referendum asking a simple yes or no question. Do they wish to keep their current political status as an overseas territory of the United Kingdom? Argentina claims the British stole the islands from them nearly 2 centuries ago, and the two nations fought a war over the territory in 1982. Argentina has dismissed this weekend's referendum as a publicity stunt, while the 2,800 islanders began holding their first vote. As Richard Bestic reports from London, Britain has insisted that those living on the Falklands have the right to decide their own future.
In London, 8,000 miles from the Falklands, is the office where the Falkland Islanders spearhead their campaign to remain British. In charge, Suki Cameron, who's made her life's work maintaining the island's protectorate status. It means that while the islands are financially self-sufficient, they depend on Britain for defence. Necessary 30 years ago when Argentine troops invaded, claiming sovereignty. In the 74-day conflict that followed, more than 900 died before Argentina's conscript forces surrendered.
Falkland House, good morning.
These days, it's the skills of a lobbyist that are required to ward off Argentina's diplomatic sabre-rattling, as Suki Cameron battles to ensure the UK government is constantly reminded the islanders want to stay British.
We can't take support in Parliament for granted. There are hundreds of other issues that are taking MPs' time, but we must make sure that MPs are kept informed of what's going on in the islands.
Suki Cameron's beat takes in the UK's House of Commons and an unending round of meetings. Members of Parliament constantly updated on the politics of the South Atlantic and the mood of the islander community.
This is about an individual people having the opportunity to actually define the way they live their life and how it is their life is going to be governed.
This referendum isn't about the result, which is beyond doubt. It's rather the people of the Falkland Islands demonstrating that they are more than just a passive colonial people. That said, they hope the argument will move from rival claims to the islands to the self-determination of the people who live there. That message from the Falklands' capital, Port Stanley, yet to be heard in Buenos Aires. Richard Bestic, CCTV, London.
Now, as Richard Bestic reported, the result of the referendum is not in doubt, since the islanders have consistently said they want to be under British protection. But most Argentines have a very different view, firmly believing that the Malvinas, as they call them, should be theirs. Daniel Schweimler now reports from Buenos Aires on why feelings there run so high.
The Malvinas issue is always high on the Argentine agenda. It's a constant political topic, the subject of protests and debate across the country, with many issues from their 1982 invasion of the islands still not resolved. But to the locals, one thing is clear. As they say here, Las Malvinas son Argentinas. The Malvinas are Argentine. 649 Argentines and 255 British troops died in that conflict. Mario Volpe was one of the survivors, and the reasons for which he fought then remain strong today.
This situation concerns the whole of Latin America and the international opinion. Argentina is asking for dialogue. It's not just saying no, it's asking for dialogue. Let's sit down and talk and see what the United Nations has to say. There's a lot of support for the measure, for the whole of Latin America and now all of Africa.
Mario Volpe has not returned to the island since that conflict 31 years ago, but he'd like to.
Yes, I would like to return, and I would like to return when the Argentine flag is flying over the Malvinas, because that would be just, not only for my comrades who died in the war, but for those first settlers who were displaced. And of course, we have a message of solidarity and peace for those living now on the Malvinas, because the Argentine constitution doesn't allow any kind of aggression towards them.
The Argentine government has already called the islanders' referendum a publicity stunt. Most Argentines believe wholeheartedly that the Malvinas are theirs and that the British have occupied the islands illegally for the past 180 years. No referendum, however convincing the result, is going to change that opinion. Daniel Schweimler, CCTV, Buenos Aires.
Well, joining me now to talk more about the referendum is Mario del Carril. He's an adjunct professor at Georgetown University right here in Washington, and he's written extensively on the Falklands conflict over the years in both US and Argentine publications. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, as we heard our reporter there tell us, the result is a foregone conclusion. So what's the point of the referendum?
Well, the result is a foregone conclusion. We all know that. It would have occurred, this result would probably have occurred any time in the last 40 or so years. But the referendum is important for England. Obviously, it is a good propaganda blow by showing that there is a community of people who wish to remain in the present status and not be part of Argentina. And though they're very few, probably 1,700, they do exist. They have interests and they have, to some extent, rights. So I do think to show this makes sense. On top of that, independently of the politics, from a human point of view, the community has a right, to express itself. It cannot be a political football. And both England has used it as a political football, and Argentina too. So I do recognize the significance, both the moral significance for the islanders to express what they believe should be their future, and also the political point of view of England making a propaganda blow against Argentina.
Okay, let's look at this one way. At one time, these islands were simply a British outpost. They were out there in the South Atlantic of little strategic importance, perhaps a little bit of military significance, but no real economic importance. But now that oil has been discovered in the Falklands Basin, in viable quantities of oil down there, does that change the equation?
For me, it has. It always has been in the equation, and the issue has to be looked at resource-wise. In other words, Great Britain, in its famous policy throughout the world of obtaining choke points, in famous cases, Gibraltar, that today still Spain does not like the fact that the English still have it. And they have more people there than they have in the Malvinas, Falklands, since you're my host. Nonetheless, this policy, suppose that in the case of Spain, in Gibraltar, they discovered oil in the Mediterranean and the English decided to exploit it. I think it would be a big row, a real big row. The issue here is how do you distribute and manage those resources? And Argentina has a very strong claim because it's not so easy as people say. There was a small bunch of, Reagan was famous when the war started. He said, just a bunch of fluff, something like this. Why are they fighting? Well, it's not just that. England tried to conquer Buenos Aires twice, in 1805 and 1807. And not only they tried to conquer Buenos Aires, when they took Montevideo, they starved out the Spanish population. Okay. That was in
we're running out of time, but I just want to ask you one other quick point, and that is, in the long term, is this sustainable for Britain? That's a good question, and it depends if there's oil or not. And also, it's not just simply the fact that whether what they obtain from the oil will work. It also is world public opinion, and this is being fought over world public opinion. And right now, Argentina, in many parts of the world, is supporting its claim because of the resource issue. Mario del Carril, thanks for joining us. Well, thank you.